let's go, because you know what I came in to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
Early setback takes a knee, buckles and caves in to Bill Haney and some other channels who are accusing him of being racist, a culture vulture that pits black fighters against each other. The majority of the heat initially came from Bill Haney, Devin Haney's father. Early setback never accepted that. He beat Lomachenko, who, let's face it, is Ellie's hero. Now, I'm not going to get into the in and outs of what I think, because it's not really that important. But to cave in and respond by saying Tank Davis is the face of boxing for millions is either his genuine opinion, and if so, it really exposes his lack of boxing knowledge. Of course, the other option would be he's trying to save his gig with all the black fighters at the PBC. Look, I got Tank as the face of boxing. Because Tank Davis is not the face of boxing. Now you know what you got to do now, Ellie, is you got to go and appease the Mexican fans who are going to say, what do you mean Tank's the face of boxing? It's Canelo. Now you got to appease them, which you'll try and do as well. Because this man would jump on any side of the fence he sees his money at. And this is what I'm talking about. Media. A lot of the brown nose with the boxers, the promoters, the rollers and the shakers. And they'll say anything to stay in grace with them. Me? I couldn't give her a fork. Couldn't give her a fork. And look, I believe people have their prejudices and their likes for whatever reason, but we at least attempt to give every fighter a fair shake on here. At least attempt. Yeah? Matchroom Boxing joins forces with Rakuten and NSN to bring boxing to Japan. Yes. Historic deal will see Matchroom host 3 major annual events on Japanese soil. Live worldwide to all DAZN subscribers, excluding Asia, over the next 3 years, featuring the best international and domestic fighters. Frank Smith said the future of boxing in Japan is incredibly bright. We are delighted to seal this historic partnership with Rakuten Ticket Inc. and NSN. Japan is an important strategic market for us to operate in and bring our world-class boxing events to this great country. We will not only showcase some of the finest fighters on the planet, but we will help establish some of the country's leading domestic talents who will undoubtedly prosper on the world stage in years to come. Joe Yamatoto, the president for Rakuten Ticket Inc. We are very happy to contribute the development of boxing in our country. The partnership with NSN and Matchroom will provide many opportunities for Japanese boxers. Now, I believe Frank said they're going to have some prize fighter structure over there as one of the events. Hey, listen, man. Big up Matchroom, man. British boxing leading the way. And yet, we have haters in the United Kingdom. They hate on success. They hate to see their own doing well. It's notorious for that. But Britain's leading the way. I'll be shocked if they do one card and the whole venture falls apart. Like the PBC and Pox and ITV. Remember that? It is what it is. Alright, so we're hearing a little something from Adam Smith now. I don't know why they didn't shut the speculation down a little earlier, you know what I mean? I still think there's a little more to it. But Adam, if that's what you want to divulge, alright. So, he's back. Cancer-free. He had cancer. Now, could have gave us a tweet and let us know that instead of all the speculation whether you had a gambling addiction or some of the other foul shit they've been saying and accusing him of. You know what I mean? It's all good. 30 years at Sky, departure onto pastures new. Where is Adam Smith going is what I want to know. That's what I'm interested in. And who's going to pick up Adam, who is a talent, unlike the man who is the head of boxing on Sky right now. He is not a talent. You know what I mean? Nah, in all seriousness, Adam will be able to walk into most operations out there, sports networks, no problem, and will be an asset. Will definitely be an asset. You can't buy experience, can you? I mean, like, Adam made that iconic soundbite, which I took.
Lift off for AJ! A new chapter, a new era!
Y'all really fucked up this time, you know, Mr. Anderson, you know that?
Y'all really fuck up this time, Mr. Anderson. Film crew, where did that come from? So, Jared Anderson was taken into custody on 2 charges. Improperly handling firearms in a vehicle whilst under the influence and operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The report states that he spent around 8 hours in jail before being released. Anderson is America's next heavyweight hope when the next current crop of champions and former champions hang up their gloves. Now, he was given the big send-up by Tyson Fury, and he's been backed by Bob Arum. He struggled with Charles Martin, who gave him all types of issues. Jared Anderson, he was a bit of a crybaby, isn't he? He was crying to Roy Jones.
Real. Some people that'll give their life for you, because your mama give her life right now for her son. You understand that?
But it's the pressure, though.
I understand the pressure, but God built us different. Did you just tell me that?
I'm 23.
In this same video, Roy also cautioned him about opting for fast cars, women, alcohol, drugs, and it looks like he's going against what Roy warned him about, and that's his decision. But, you know, let me tell you this now, right? The way they've touted up this guy here, and then a lot of Americans wanted to shit on the likes of Fabio Wardley, who was chief support on the Fury Ngannou card. Give me Fabio Wardley. Fabio don't cry about shit. He enjoys fighting. He enjoys knocking people out. And maybe he might not become the top dude. Maybe not. But that's not the point. And if he doesn't enjoy his job, he doesn't tell the fans and the media that. Like Crybaby Anderson.
You soft, huh? You soft.
So we find out that Robert Helenius was popped for clofamine post-fight, getting knocked out in the 7th by Anthony Joshua. They're saying either heavy consumption of meat or eggs in his diet will be his defense. How effective that will be doesn't really matter. He's not going to be under the same scrutiny as Conor Benn. And of course he's protesting his innocence. They all do.
Now I'm sitting in a courtroom all day. I claim I'm innocent, but that's what they all say.
So I've seen Edward Vasquez has been on some Showtime cards, Tom Brown promoted, and Lou DiBella cards. So it doesn't look like he's got a fixed abode, which leaves him as an easy target to get ganked in that boxing ring. Now I'm not going to scream robbery for either the loss to Joe Cordina, a majority, and a split decision loss to Raymond Ford, both on Matchroom / DAZN cards. And he's aggrieved about it. He's saying Eddie Hearn knows I won. They've did it to me again. Yes, the second time he's lost razor-thin decisions on Matchroom cards. And his issue is he doesn't have no representation to really back him up and at least let people hear his case after these fights that could have went either way. You know, American boxing fans, they prefer to talk about Errol Spence and Jamal Charlo and fucking Wilder's wife, talking a whole lot of madness to him and a lot of nonsense, really, to be honest. Just all bullcrap, to be honest. And fighters like Edward Vasquez, Shaquie Foster, the real fighters, get no representation or get no burn. Sad, really, isn't it? Yeah, it is sad. It is pretty sad. I mean, when you're talking about Edward Vasquez, he came in that ring against Joe Cordina, co-signed by Shaquie Foster. Eddie Hearn said to Shaquie Foster after the tremendous battle he had with Eduardo Hernandez, we'll have to get this unification with Joe Cordina. Shaquie looked at him and said, you got to get past Vasquez first. And Eddie looked shocked, like, oh, what, is he good? He said, I spar with this guy. He said he's tremendously tough and a very good fighter. And that's what Joe Cordina found out. Unless Vasquez is extremely resilient and determined to win a world title, what's more likely to happen to him? How do you stay motivated? You got no one to back you. You see, if you got backing, then you lose them decisions. If you got people who have some influence in the game, you can at least call Cordina or Raymond Ford for a rematch. And with the backing and the fan base behind you, then you have influence on the media. Then you have a shot to get in a rematch. And there's a good chance you won't even get ganked on the scorecard if you've got strong representation. But with what status the likes of Vasquez has amongst the American media and boxing fans, he's just going to fade into obscurity. Probably end up working at Walmart, you know what I mean? And then we'll be talking about Keith Thurman fighting fucking Danny Garcia for the middleweight title on the PBC. And the PBC fanatics cheesing about it like it's really good. Pathetic, really, isn't it? Yeah, 2 razor-sharp decision losses to Matchroom fighters. What did you think was going to happen to Shaquie Foster? when he fought Hernandez, a DAZN MATCHROOM fighter. If he didn't stop him in the last round, he was going to get jobbed as well because he has no backing.
So I'm thinking, okay, Eddie Hearn won the purse bid to promote this fight, took it down to Cancun. The main event was OSHAQUIE Foster from Texas fighting in Cancun. So I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, bro, you don't want to leave this shit to the cards down there. You see what I'm saying? I was thinking to myself, like, he needs to get the knockout because they going to fuck him real good and rob the shit out of him with the way it was going.
I rarely get shit wrong. You could give Al Heyman $2 million on Netflix and he's going to flop.
No matter how nice they are, they're gonna flop.
The reason he's going to flop is because he doesn't know how to spot talent. He got in the game by taking half of Oscar's stable, him and Richard Schaefer. But he's not a talent spotter. He hooked up with Mayweather when Mayweather was the pound-for-pound best fighter in the sport. You see, if Eddie Hearn had OSHAQUIE Foster and Vasquez, they'd be looked after way better than they're being looked after right now as American boxers. And the fact that Al Heyman hasn't spotted talent like that right in front of his nose, hasn't spotted it, hasn't cultivated it, hasn't looked after it, it doesn't matter how much money you give him, he's going to flop. Yeah? If the likes of Lee Wood was right in front of Al Heyman's nose, him and all the rest of the mugs around him would have just said, he's just domestic level. We're not going to fuck with him. Yeah, and then you'd miss out on a crowd-pleasing, good ticket seller, potential world champion, who you didn't have to pay a whole load of money to sign. You cultivated it yourself. And Al can't do that shit. He's no good at it. He's not a boxing man. He doesn't know where the talent is. Yeah, he hasn't got no one around him capable. Al proved with his one fight out of a multiple fight deal to be completed with the ITV that he can't play the global game. And look, the likes of Bob Arum and Frank Warren are old, and they've done a great job. They're legendary promoters, but they're old. The next flex now for a modern day promoter is to play the global game. If you can't play the global game, forget the Netflix deal. It's going to flop in seconds. The only way the Netflix gig can work, and you restrict it to strictly American boxing, is you've got to take away that pay-per-view option. Not for every fight, but for most fights that are on there. And the fighters have to fight to their worth. 50-50, evenly matched contests, like Russell Peltz used to do at the Blue Horizon in Philly. Basically, 1,000 plus capacity, the Blue Horizon. Similar to the York Hall. And you know what I always used to remember as a kid? Is thinking, man, I want to go to Philly to one of them cards. Because they used to write them up in the boxing news in England. One thing about this country, man, like, sometimes we underplay ourselves, right? And we shouldn't. Boxing News is the oldest boxing magazine in the world. I believe around 1908, right? Way before the Ring magazine. It comes out weekly. Weekly. Not monthly, weekly. With all up-to-date information on fights. They were covering all them Blue Horizon cards, the Felt Forum cards, which were popular back in the 80s. Everything. Global sport, Japanese cards, Australian cards. Covered everything. Every week without fail. With all up-to-date information and data on fights. Tickets for Blue Horizon cards, I've researched it today. £5 in the 80s. That's dirt cheap, even in the 80s. And take inflation into consideration. £5. $5, I should say. $5. $5 would be one of the cheapest tickets you could get. But that's what it was. It was working class boxing for working class people. And the fighters always delivered. Cyclone Hart, Jeff Chandler, Ivan Robinson.
Blue Horizon is the best place in the world to watch a fight.
The Mecca of Philly.
The Blue Horizon was a home run.
The ring was the smallest ring I ever boxed in.
I think the four sanctioning bodies have done, it's a disgrace what they have done to the sport I fell in love with. You've got a whole generation of boxing fans today who have no clue what it was like when there was one world champion in each of 8 or 10 weight classes. And that's why the general public couldn't give a shit about boxing. They don't. The only people who care about boxing are the boxing fanatics that go to the boxing websites. People who go to football, basketball, baseball, hockey games, they have absolutely no interest in boxing. The best analogy that I've always used, but if there were no playoffs, let's say in baseball, and each of the 8 division winners at the end of the season didn't play each other, and they all went around saying, we're the champions. Yeah. That's what boxing is, and that's why nobody cares about boxing anymore.
It's Russell Peltz airing out his grievances with boxing today. And he's a boxing man through and through. Boxing man through and through. A lot of them cards on the Blue Horizon, they were aired on Tuesday night fights on the USA Network. What would you call that? Basic cable. And it was Tuesday night fights. And this is what they were broadcasting on there. This is grassroots boxing. This is where the likes of an Edward Vasquez could shine and get a nice profile, and then maybe eventually would end up on Showtime and HBO for big money. But the Horizon is going to keep doing its thing and bringing them competitive fights to the public. And they know they're not getting swindled out of their money. NABF titles, USBA title fights, and world title fights within a reasonable budget. Tuesday night fights, go do the research. Sean O'Grady, Al Albert. After that, Friday night fights on ESPN. Joe Tessitore and Teddy Atlas. That's where I first saw Deontay Wilder. That's where I first saw Demetrius Andrade. This is pre-social media for me, and you couldn't always find what slot or time slot it was going to be broadcast. So I used to set up the VHS, 2-hour VHS, but you can record 4 hours worth of content, but you could time stretch it to 4 hours. And I'd just leave it on record, and I'd always catch them and watch them when I get back from work. Hey, some good fights, some really good fights. We're having a great discussion here in the UK. Big up 505. I don't like putting things out in the atmosphere that are not positive. I just want to understand what the heck happens should Chris Billiam Smith lose to Masternak, because this sounds like a mess. How can Okolie and Richard RIAKPORHE be saying they're both going to fight the winner next? So everything boxing. RIAKPORHE is WBO #1 and will likely face Chris Billiam Smith next should he beat Masternak in the first half of next year as the mandatory challenger. Okolie is still owed a shot as well because he forfeited his rematch clause, and he should get the winner, probably a run out beforehand as well. I replied to this saying, I guarantee by next year SHALOM will have issues with this. Yes, he's going to have traffic on his doorstep. Like 505 said, if Masternak wins, is he obligated to give RIAKPORHE a shot straight away? Is he mandated as #1? He certainly ain't mandated to give Lawrence Okolie shit. The rematch clause is with Okolie and Billiam Smith. It's on that contract. If Masternak wins, Lawrence Okolie is in what position? Base the Kid, he said, Chris Billiam Smith said in his interview with him last week that he's contractually obligated to face Okolie next. So it's more than likely RIAKPORHE is going to have another keep busy 2 fights. Boxer won't let him enforce a mandatory WBO position while their own people are in contention for it. And let's not forget, he forfeited a shot against Jai Opataya. But this is what he told October Red recently.
There's even people out here saying, Richard RIAKPORHE had a lucky escape, because if he went in with Jai Opataya would have smoked him as well. That's kind of like the energy that's out there. What would you say to that?
One of the things that a lot of people don't know is when we was trying to make the fight, they opted for a voluntary defense, a warm-up before me. But they wanted Jordan Thompson as a warm-up.
What's that got to do, Richard, with you pulling out of the purse bid on the day of the purse bid, when your title shot was guaranteed? So apparently Lawrence still wants his title shot. He wants his rematch entitlement. But just the other week, Ben Shalom was trying to push him up to heavyweight, saying, oh, you know, he's tight in the weight. I expect to see him at heavyweight next. Now he still wants a rematch for his old cruiserweight belt. Ben was talking that Richard was going to fight Gulamarian for the title. Dorticus had been inactive for over 14 months or so, whatever time period it was. Even he beats you out to a title shot. It's embarrassing. No wonder he had the shades on in the room talking to October Red. Crazy. And Lawrence Okolie, you better go get yourself a Bournemouth scarf and hat and be the loudest in the crowd supporting Billiam Smith, hoping he wins. Richard RIAKPORHE hasn't fought since January. He's fighting next week on an Adam Azim undercard against Dylan Bregion, if that's how pronounced, from France, who's lost 3 out of his last 7. How does that prepare him for a world title fight? Exactly. A lot of things Richard RIAKPORHE says are very suspect. Now, we can start with him telling October Red that Jai Opetaia wanted a tune-up before he fought him. But yet still, you had an opportunity to fight him, and your promoter pulled you out of the purse bid on the day of the purse bid. So what has this tune-up that Opetaia supposedly wanted got to do with anything? Nothing. Nothing at all. The nerve to blame Eddie Hearn for why he didn't get the shot against Opetaia. The nerve. And then, Lawrence Okolie's brother recently told Travis and KG from Undefeated that Richard was offered a title shot when Lawrence Okolie had that WBO belt, and he turned it down. And he's explaining it recently that, yeah, well, I wanted to get a belt first and then challenge him and we have a unification. So let me get this right. Richard RIAKPORHE is fighting in Wolverhampton next week. His promoters dropped the bag on the Goulamarian title shot, the Opetaia title shot, and you're talking about going out there and getting another belt. When was you going to get this other belt to fight Okolie? It's suspect. I believe Henry, Okolie's brother. I believe him. Your boy, Cy Jordan, has got a ballpark figure on Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou UK pay-per-views on TNT. The rumours are it did around 400,000 buys on TNT. That's not very good. Kell Brook versus Amir Khan done better numbers than that. It didn't even crack 500,000 at 21.95. Now, if people had known beforehand, it would have been as competitive as what it was. It would have done way more than that. But this was hardly worth Tyson Fury not fighting Alexander Usyk for. The Usyk fight would have done way more in the UK. Way, way more. Derek Chisora versus Usyk did more numbers than this. Tony Bellew versus Usyk did more numbers than this. Any AJ fight against Usyk did more numbers than this. I don't really dislike Tyson Fury. I dislike his fans. They're real suckers. You know, they're coming out now saying, oh, well, it was obvious he wasn't trying to sell pay-per-views with this fight. All you want is views, so you won't tell the truth. They're a bunch of saps. Idiotic saps.
It's game-changing. It's bigger than show-stopping.